Hello and welcome. I'm Amritanshu Rai and you're watching Law of the Land on Raj Sabha TV. Today we bring to you the Representation of the People Amendment Bill 2017. To discuss the issue, I have with me Mr. S.Y.Quraishi-Former Chief Election Commissioner and Mr. Virag Gupta, Advocate, Supreme Court. Now for the highlights. Bill seeks to empower NRIs to vote by proxy. It seeks to make election law gender neutral, replaces the term wife with spouse. The Representation of People Act is the legal framework which regulates elections in our country. The Representation of People's Amendment Bill 2017 seeks to empower NRI to vote by proxy. As of now, the existing law provides for voting only by physically being present during the casting of vote. It also seeks to make the existing law gender neutral.
Section 20A of the existing law, the Representation of the People Act, provides for registration and enrollment of overseas electors in the electoral rolls. The Registration of Electors Rules 1960 provide that the overseas electors can register themselves in the electoral rolls of their respective constituencies on the basis of self-attested copies of the passport and valid visa and exercise their franchise in person on production of original passport at the time of voting at the specified polling booths. This makes physical presence of the overseas electors in the respective polling station in India on the day of polling, leading to hardship to the overseas electors in exercising their franchise.
The right to cast your vote is a statutory right and you should not be deprived of that right merely because you're not residing within the country. So election law, it has always been held as a law of, it's a creature of the statute. And as long as the statute permits you to vote, you should be given the facility to vote. The fact that you are living outside this country, you don't have a place of residence, so you don't get a voter card made, that should be no ground for you to be disfranchised in that sense. So that is only a more of a legal and a state responsibility to ensure that every citizen, wherever he is, gets the opportunity to vote.
To ensure that the overseas electors can cast their votes, the government proposes to amend the existing law to provide for voting by proxy. This will allow electors to exercise their franchise from their place of residence abroad. The bill proposes to amend Section 60 of the Representation of the People Act 1951 to enable the overseas electors to appoint a proxy to cast the vote in an election on their behalf, subject to conditions to be laid down in the conduct of elections. It is also proposed to amend Section 20 of the Representation of the People Act 1950 and Section 60 of the Representation of the People Act 1951 to make these provisions gender neutral. The existing law provides for the wife of a person holding a service qualification to vote. The bill replaces the term wife with spouse.
Our NRI brothers who have been allowed to do proxy voting now, they were sitting helplessly outside India. They were looking at their constituencies. They are well-wishers of constituencies. They are well-wishers of India. But their hands were tied and they could not do anything. As earlier, the government had allowed the NRIs to come into India and vote in their constituencies. But that was practically very difficult because spending so much money, so much foreign currency and coming into India just to vote. So that did not see the light of the day. As a matter of fact, around 8,500 people also did come in the previous election in Kerala to vote. And there was also one NRI who stood for the elections. But then it is not feasible. Now when they have got the right to vote through proxy, things will be very good for them. It will be very good for India also. Especially the political parties, they will have to look globally now.
The effort to empower NRI voters began with 2 PILs filed by VP Shamsheer, a UAE-based doctor. and Nagendra Chindam, chairman of Pravasi Bharat in London in the Supreme Court. The Election Commission prepared a report titled Exploring Feasibility of Alternative Options for Voting by Overseas Electors and presented it in the Apex Court. The Election Commission had suggested that NRI voters could be empowered better if the law was amended. The Representation of the People Amendment Bill 2017 was introduced in Lok Sabha by the Minister of Law and Justice Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad on 18 December 2017.
The bill proposes facilitating an external mode of voting, that is voting by proxy, whereby such electors can exercise their franchise from their place of residence abroad. If the bill is passed, the overseas voter can appoint a proxy to cast their vote on their behalf. Nishtha Malhotra with cameraman Manoj for Rajya Sabha Television.
The proposal has been there with the Election Commission for a long time now. It was moved during the earlier UPA regime. Sir, it opens up a completely new area of inclusiveness, which is trying to include the NRI voters who have been wanting to participate in the electoral process. The only thing that has been deterring them is they have to be physically present, which has been the case right now. But this bill takes it further and allows them to vote through proxy.
Yeah.
What are the issues that you see when it actually boils down to implementation?
You know, if you allow me to go back a little to the origin of this issue.
Right, sir.
You know, when we started Pravasi Bharati Divas in 2003, that was the time when some Pravasis raised this voice that they should be allowed to vote. It took some years for the government to take cognizance of that request. In 2008, 10, in the 8th Pravasi Divas, with Dr. Manmohan Singh, the Prime Minister, suddenly announced, to our surprise and shock, that from next year they will be allowed to vote. Why were we shocked? Because we did not know how many NRIs, what will be the logistics, what will be the consequences. We talked to Foreign Secretary, Nirupma Rao was the Foreign Secretary. She came for 2-3 meetings. She was also
Clueless.
Worried. Also clueless and worried. He said, look, if thousands, lakhs of voters come outside the embassies, and don't forget that embassies are not only in London, in Paris and New York, they are also in Riyadh, in those countries where even 20 people, if they collect outside the embassy, there will be helicopters flying. What is the security issue developing here?
Yeah.
So we were not sure how many lakhs will actually come up and report. She said, we'll give you the passcode of passport and visa, and so that you deal with them directly because our system will crash. He said, look, if you cannot handle it, how can we? I mean, this is everyday job, therefore let us see. To our surprise, very poor response. Very, very poor response. It started in February, and the next month were the elections in Kerala. About 8,000 people registered, and of which 4,500 came and voted also. One even contested and lost. Now, in contrast, the response, even after 4 or 5 years in Punjab, just 3 voters were registered, which means that the noise which we heard in the Pravasi Divas actually does not reflect the real sentiment of people living abroad. They are not really bothered. Otherwise, they would have registered. You made a very relevant observation that the one reservation they have, that they have to physically come. But in Kerala, 50% of them came back physically.
Yeah.
Although they're physically coming, we see fraud with fraud also, because model code we are always trying to improve. Now, what if the politicians start paying their fare, come on a holiday to Kerala and vote and go back? How will we check that kind of a corruption? So it raised more issues than it solved. Anyway, we went ahead and we have been conducting the election with that. Now, this is an important step forward. In 2014, some youngsters in London, whom I have met and addressed 2-3 times, that now my friends, they went to Supreme Court and they said that they should be given right to vote. On that, the Supreme Court asked the Election Commission to set up a committee of officers of different ministries. That committee came up with 4 suggestions, 4 alternatives which are possible. One, voting in the embassies. Second, online voting. Third was e-postal ballot. That means send the ballot by email to save time, but receive it by post. And fourth was proxy voting. The committee said that the last 2 are more feasible. And Supreme Court had asked the government to go ahead and take it forward. Now the government has chosen proxy voting. And that is why
the bill has come. So you've given us a good perspective. Virag, I want to understand the 4 options that Sir mentioned. Government is trying to get in the 4th option, which is by proxy. Do you see a problem with that?
There are 2 important problems are there. Number 1 problem is that proxy voting will be violative of the basic concept of voting, where your vote is supposed to be the confidential. Because you will be disclosing your vote in advance to the proxy person, where the proxy person has not been defined. Now we have seen, and there one more aspect is there, then in Indian elections, foreign element cannot influence the Indian elections. That is also a very fundamental principle, so that Indian democracy is intact. Now what happened, we have seen that many people are coming after a long stay from foreign to India, and that is called the transfer of residence. Now there are agents who are collectively organizing some smuggling goods through those persons in the name of TR. Because those people may not have the bona fide goods or the bona fides their households, and they are paying them money, saying that you please disclose that this is your TR good, TR transfer of residence goods, and accordingly that is cleared without any duty. So tomorrow there are agents who say that we will go or we will organize this proxy certificate or authorization from those persons. Now number 1 is, what is the process of authentication, whether that proxy certification is correct or not. The basic issue is there are the 4 options. Now the one option, online voting, should be rejected, because if that is accepted, then there will be demand for the same in India also as per the Article 14. But what can be the problem in the postal ballot? When the same facility is given to the army, defense and other service personnel, so any person who want to vote, they can do the postal ballot and deposit in the Indian embassy. Even they need not to go on the same day when the voting is there. So I personally feel that proxy voting will be violated.
But I think here, Sir mentioned the practical reason that the embassies are not really equipped to handle the kind of crowd. Sir, you were earlier mentioning that there were 60 lakh NRI voters in all.
No, there are different figures are there. There are figures 1.3 crore to 3 crore NRIs who are...
That has increased.
And roughly 25,000 persons have enrolled. And most of them are from Kerala. And let us understand that Kerala is a small state. And if most of the persons are registered there, then they can have impact in the state elections in a big manner.
The result will be decided in Kuwait and Canada.
And let me tell you that even embassy may not be required at all. A person can download on the basis of their password and the voter ID number directly the e-wallet, and they can send directly to Election Commission by post.
So, is there a completely new way that technology could support Election Commission in conduct of elections and allow people anywhere, everywhere to be included, register and included? So present technology, there are technologies available which secure the engagement between an institution and an individual. Is it time that these ideas were thought of?
You know, the Election Commission and India is an IT superpower, and we use a high technology everywhere except in voting. And our problem is not the security of internet voting. You may say that it is secure. After all, banking also takes place through internet. We have non-technical reasons for not starting internet voting. And they are, if somebody comes to your house, puts a gun, and he says, take out your computer and vote for me, or better still, I'll take it. We can't give you protection at home. Or somebody comes and gives you money. Here is 5,000 rupees, give me your computer. So
The Election Commission has to guard against all these.
security and secrecy, because election is not just about NRIs, election is about all of India. And the issue which Virat was hinting at was, now voting is not even a fundamental right, but equality of every citizen is fundamental right. Now, if you come from Bihar to Delhi, you are a nobody. But from Bihar, you go to Dubai, you are a VIP. You will get all these facilities.
So you were saying that even the migrants will then want right to proxy.
They are already demanding, and why will not? Why won't they?
Right, because the status is almost the same.
Thing, because it's the same thing.
It's time for us to head into a break. When we return, we will tell you more about the Representation of People's Act. The Representation of People's Act of 1950 is the fundamental regulatory framework which guides all aspects of election process. It was made before elections started happening in India over 6 decades back and has continued to evolve over the years.
The Representation of the People Act was enacted to provide for the conduct of elections of the Houses of the Parliament and to the House or Houses of the Legislature of each state. The qualifications and disqualifications for membership of those houses, the corrupt practices and other offences at or in connection with such elections, and the decision of doubts and disputes arising out of or in connection with such elections.
They will cast their vote by e-ballot or by postal ballot. It was also suggested that they should be sending it through their emails. The ballot should go from her email and it should become filled by them. But that has not worked out. And there is also a bit of a discrepancy here, because many of the NRIs who are working abroad are labor class, for example, in the Middle East, and they are still being influenced by their agents. So we don't know how much accuracy or how much secrecy is maintained, because as I said, even the passports of many NRIs are kept by these agents. So they can always influence. So there is a bit discrepancy here, which has to be sorted out, and which we'll come to know once when this thing starts happening.
Representation of People's Act was enacted before first general elections in 1950. It provides the allocation of seats state-wise and the delimitation of constituencies for the purpose of election to the Parliament and state legislatures. It also provides for qualification of voters, the methodology of preparation of electoral rolls, and the manner of filling seats in the Council of States.
Election Commission made 2 proposals, saying that one is the proxy voting. A person who is living abroad, he can appoint anybody as his proxy, and then he will go and vote in person at the polling station. The second one was, of course, that we wanted that we may send postal ballot papers through electronic transmission, one way. And then they may download at their end and then send the hard copy. But that had many problems. Our government was not sure whether the ballot paper will reach the right man. Those contractors, etc., who have taken these people on employment, they may not even give those ballot papers to them.
The electoral roll for every parliamentary constituency other than a parliamentary constituency in the state of Jammu and Kashmir or in a union territory not having a legislative assembly consists of the electoral rolls for all the assembly constituencies comprised within that parliamentary constituency.
As per the new bill, the members who are associated with the armed forces, the armed police forces and employees of the centre posted outside their state are eligible as service voters. Nishtha Malhotra with cameraman Manoj for Rajya Sabha Television.
There are several reform proposals relating to conduct of elections, and the Supreme Court has been spearheading these changes through various of its judgments. And two words are very critical and crucial to the conduct of elections in India, and they are security and secrecy. These two words are fundamental to the conduct of elections, and every reform has to be tested on these two benchmarks. So coming to you on the aspect of proxy, in case the bill doesn't define, how do you think the proxy, who can be the proxy, and how do you identify who the proxy is going to be? If the definition is not there, can it be done in the rules which follow later on?
It has to be done in the rules. Presently, there are two systems. Suppose somebody is outside India and want to fight legal case in India, so they have to send their wakalatnama.
Right.
It has to be duly endorsed, or somebody has to send the power of attorney. It has to be duly endorsed. The big question is, what is going to be the procedure of registration or endorsement of that proxy? Who is going to authenticate that this proxy is correct or not? Unless you involve your embassies, you have to involve your embassy in some manner. Otherwise, somebody will come that I have proxy of this person, kindly allow me to vote. Second question is that the person who is living outside says that you please vote for X and the proxy votes for Y. Then who is going to ensure that the correct voting is done, because that voting will not be disclosed in the proxy certification. Now, I personally feel that other than postal ballot, the correct procedure can be you go to embassy, get your postal ballot, fill it, and there should be arrangement with some postal agencies. The person who want to vote should pay the charges, because if he is ready to come India and ready to pay the airfare, he should pay the postal charges and send like the defense personnel are sending their postal ballot. That is the best way.
Sir, why is there a resistance to the postal ballot, the electronic transfer that was also a proposal to the Supreme Court? Why is the government or the Election Commission reluctant to include this? Because this, I mean, as he's mentioned, there are other problems with the proxy, and proxy is the way forward. You have to include them. There is no question of not including them. You cannot exclude anyone in this country. So it has to be done. That is the reality. But it is the logistical issues which are somewhere creating a hurdle. Do you think see it that way?
The government may have political reasons, but basically logistical reasons are handled by the Election Commission. And we have been doing postal ballots for decades. They come in thousands. And the only problem there, of course, has been that all this has to happen within 13 days. Because from the day the candidates are finalized, then we'll, by the end of the evening, we will print the ballot papers and we'll send them to everybody. It gives us 13 days. It has to come back to us before the counting begins. Now, since we are doing election in many phases, so these 13 days actually it becomes 1.5 months and 2 months also. But suppose it is a single phase election, this ballot paper has to come back to us in 13 days. It becomes difficult, which is why one of the reforms suggested was that at least half the time can be cut down if it is sent to you by email. Instantly you receive.
Electronic.
And then you have to send it, and that is enough for 13 days. But Virag has given a very good suggestion, which was not in my mind earlier, because postal service from all over the world is not just New York and London. It may be anywhere. It may still be erratic. Best is to send it to the embassy, postal ballot, and embassy can send a bag. So that can be organized quickly, and it can be done in 13 days. Now, proxy voting also has been in existence for only the defense services. I don't know for what purpose it has not been popularized, although even in my time we call the defense ministry top officials. Why are you not popularizing? In fact, once the entire commission went to Odi sector on Pakistan border, we talked to 200 Jawans asking the officers to keep away. We asked them, what do you prefer? They all wanted proxy voting, because they say we don't want to have a voting right here. Everything is provided by the army on the border. We want political power in our villages. So give us the vote there. And they wanted to authorize their spouse or their family. One problem with the proxy voting provision currently is you can authorize anybody as proxy. That is very, very problematic, which means you can sell the vote to anybody. So, give it to your parent, give it to your blood relation, wife or husband, spouse, that is fine. So, at least one good thing in this reform of last month is that this power is probably being narrowed down to give to a spouse. That is if you're married.
Correct, correct. Quickly, Virag, quickly.
I see a good future of voting agents, like there are smuggling agents, like there are foreign currency agents, like there are other agents, passport agents, visa agents. There will be voting agents. They will say, I will arrange 1,000 proxies for you. You please pay so much.
Very
money.
quickly, sir, very quickly.
Yeah. In fact, just adding to that, actually, that was the thought in my mind. There was like it will be hawala. You deliver the money to me in here, and I will deliver your vote in the
That's it.
constituency.
Moving on, my colleague Nishtha Malhotra spoke to S.Y.Quraishi, former Chief Election Commissioner, who's also our guest here, to get his point of view earlier on in the show.
Sir, how are elections going to be impacted if 20A seeking physical presence is diluted by proxy?
Well, proxy voting is already allowed to the army officials, the defense personnel. So some of them are using it, not as many as we would like to do. It has been extended to the NRIs on I think on an experimental basis. Let us see how it works. Although there is a huge principle of equality involved, because migrants within the country do not have this facility, and if you go abroad, you get this facility. So, and it's a huge facility. Therefore, surely some migrant within the country will go to the court and question it. So, but anyway, let us see. Secondly, my own experience has been that the noise which we hear about the NRI voting actually is only noise. In real terms, they don't participate. It was introduced about 2011. In 6 years, hardly about 1,500 or 2,000 have registered after 6 years, and that too 95% from Kerala. No other place. All the Punjab send lots of NRIs, all other countries or all other cities, and there are so many 100 odd countries where we have NRIs, but their enrollment as per the existing rule has been negligible. There were only 3 from Punjab for 5 years. So let us see. Maybe it's more noise and not real need and demand. But we will see how it works.
Sir, why is it important to extend proxy voting facility to NRIs?
Well, NRI, ideally every Indian, every citizen of India should have right to vote. And just because they have gone out, this right should not be taken away. If not proxy, but there are 4 other ways they can vote. So the logic is that every Indian should have the power, should have the right. But then people in jail are not allowed to vote. I feel that they should also be allowed to vote, and their number is not even very small, just about 4 lakhs. So they should, and for them, voting is not even physically difficult, because a polling station can be set up with a maybe kind of a postal ballot facility within the jail.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Virag. Thank you, Mr. Quraishi, for joining us on this discussion. It's time for us to end the show. You can email your suggestions and comments to law.rstv@gmail.com. You can also watch our shows on the RSTV page of YouTube. We'll be back with a new episode and a new issue. Keep watching Rajya Sabha TV.